Coming to me. When are you going to give me the signal?
All right, go ahead. Go ahead.
Life is in relationships. Relationships are life. Your stories, our stories. Your journey, our journey. This is us. I am Latoya Berry Jones, and my co-host is Teddy Asiel Jones. Welcome to This Is Us podcast. Another episode, actually the third episode, and we are so excited to be here tonight on another exciting topic that we will be discussing tonight. Now, last week you would have heard us talk about sexuality, and we had our esteemed guest Dr. Joan Pinkney, and tonight we have another esteemed guest. He's here waiting for us, and you will hear from our guest tonight. His name is Pastor Napoleon Black. We're so excited to have Pastor Black here with us tonight as we will be delving into another interesting topic, another informative topic. So in a few minutes, you will be hearing from our guest tonight, Pastor Napoleon Black. But let's talk a little bit about Pastor Black. Now, Mr. Napoleon Black is the husband of Anita Black, teacher at Dunrobin Primary School and deaconess at Marvelly Gospel Hall. They have been married for 22 years and are the proud parents of 2 children. They are also foster parents. Mr. Black has been a pastor for over 16 years and now serves at Marvelly Gospel Hall in Kingston since 2001. He is a presenter on the Christian Brethren radio program, Look at Life, heard on RJR on Sunday mornings. He is involved in lecturing at the tertiary level, teaching in areas such as philosophy and critical thinking. He is also involved in mentoring, training and developing and equipping leaders, particularly within the church community. He is founder and CEO of a parachurch ministry, Pastors According to His Heart, Path Ministries, an advocacy ministry for pastors and Christian leaders and their families. He is also an author. He authors the book, When He Ascended, Rediscovering the Gifts of the Holy Spirit for the Church in the 21st Century. Pastor Black was educated at Monroe College and the Jamaica Theological Seminary in Kingston and Haggai Institute in Singapore. Friends, welcome our guest. Pastor Black, are you there with us?
I am here. Thank you so much, Latoya.
Welcome, sure. Thank you for being here with us tonight. We're excited to have you here with us on our episode, and this is episode 3. Thank you for joining us as we are going to be talking about a very, very, very critical topic tonight. One that is trending, one that is very relevant to us right now, especially as we navigate things that are happening right now. And here is my co-host.
Hi, everyone. Greetings. Good to have you. Good to be back with you.
Yes.
Welcome, Napoleon. Great to be hanging out with my brethren. You know, of all that has been said, he is my brethren, my bona fide top brethren.
I could say that too.
Yeah, sure. Go right ahead.
Well, I kind of adopted him, but thank you for lending him to me.
Yeah,
so we now share him. Can we say that? Yes. Yes, Pastor Black. So we are here tonight to talk about some real issues.
Let's get it on.
Yes, as last week we spoke about sexuality, and actually tonight you're going to be talking to us about the theological aspect of sexuality, sexuality and the Western church.
Yeah.
Now, Pastor Black, I heard that you have written an award-winning undergrad research in this area. So I know that you come with expertise, you have come with years of experience as a pastor. And so that we know that tonight you are well learned. Can I say that? Well-rounded, well-informed. And so what we're hearing tonight are facts and not opinions. So we are excited that you are able to join us to tell us the real things, the things that are happening, and also to help us to navigate some of these even uncharted waters. Can I say that? Or is it that everything is just happening right now and so nothing is new?
Well, there's nothing new under the sun, Solomon did say, but let's hear what the historical perspectives are. Let's hear what the shifts in time, over time, have been, and where we are now, and where are we going, the Western Church in particular, on the matter of sexuality. So, Naps, let's start with, share some of your findings quickly. You know, it's what now over. The research is now over 20.
Yeah, man, it's pretty dated. Yeah.
Over 20 years now.
20 years.
Yeah, the time has flown by.
Yeah.
But I mean, the findings are perhaps even more relevant now.
No,
And
absolutely.
you and I, we've worked, and the rest of the team, we've worked in Path Ministries, as was mentioned, largely arising out of that research. What are some of the findings that emerged from that research back there in the early 2000s?
Yeah, well, first of all, it is a strong look at just how church leaders, first of all, are navigating their own sexuality. And that's foundational to the conversation. How are church leaders navigating? And when we say church leaders, perhaps we might just say the skew would be towards men, since as we would know, the clergy is largely male.
Largely, right, indeed, largely male.
Largely male dominated. Ideas of patriarchy comes to the fore, ideas of chauvinism come to the fore. And all of those male trends, dispositions to dominate, to control, to manipulate even come to the fore, as well as some of the character flaws that many of these men come to ministry with, some of which have not been examined, some of which have not been even discussed. And in many instances, there's cases in which it seems as though some of these persons have never taken the time to even put themselves in accountability spaces. Now, among the persons who hold me accountable is somebody who can just take my phone, look through it to see who I was talking with or not talking with, check the photos and the pictures to see who I may or may not have been talking with. That kind of a thing. So Teddy does that all the time. He can come to my house, look under my bed, under my mattress to see if I have any Vogue or anything there that perhaps should not be there, you know?
Should not be there.
Exactly. Have any conversation with any of the significant people in my life, just to make sure that, so the idea of accountability.
Right. And you know, years ago, Naps, I remember coming across, might have been in Christianity Today. It was when you know, the names like Jim Baker and Jimmy Swaggart were perhaps far more known than they are now. And the article was indicating that conversations were had with them. They named Jimmy Swaggart and Jim Baker, two of four prominent church leaders, televangelists, worldwide kind of ministry, who had fallen into, you know, in the case of all four, sexual sin, and had lost their ministry. And one of the common things that they all indicated is just what you have spoken about. They all indicated that they had no one to whom they were accountable.
Right.
So you are saying that that was one of the things that emerged in that research.
Lack of accountability, fundamental to lots of the problems we find, not only at the top of the church, but just across church life. nobody's holding anybody accountable because everybody is talking to the Lord, and me and God have this covered, me and God have this part, so I don't need to talk to anybody.
Yeah, and then you in your corner and I in mine, that kind of a thing.
Some don't have a corner at all. That's the problem too. They're just all over the place, all kind of things. Yeah? So a part of what the studies found was, for instance, that as high as 23%, I think, at the time, of pastors were willingly admitted that they were having sexual intercourse with a member in the congregation.
Over 20%.
Yeah. So that means at the time when we did the research, and we did ask the questions of the pastors on campus at the time, and that's what it found. In fact, that of 10 pastors, 2 are actually physically, literally, sexually involved with a member of the congregation. And we're not meaning no outside of the congregation. We're not talking about flirting. We're not talking about any other inappropriate conduct except sexual intercourse. Direct
sexual intercourse. Yeah.
What was worse? What was worse, Steve, was that as many as 70% of pastors knew of other pastors who were sexually involved within the congregation. So I was wondering to myself, of course, the studies would not tell us whether it was the same 20% that were known to be and others knew about, or otherwise, So it's difficult to tell in the information.
Exactly.
Yep. So it is that high, but what is also known that when it comes to fidelity as a general issue, a lot of church leaders really struggle, and we can, I guess, later on in the class we'll look at some other reasons.
So Naps, just putting context for us and our viewers, what exactly do we mean when we speak of the Western Church, so that everybody's on the same page and we're following?
Yeah, the Western Church largely is the church, the church that came out of Rome, that filtered into Europe, and that has come into the Americas. So generally, when we talk about the Western Church, that's where we're headed, as against the Greek side of things and so on, and maybe even the African side of things, but largely Europe and the Americas.
Right, as opposed to the Orthodox Church.
Orthodox, yeah. Greek Orthodox.
Ethiopian Orthodox.
Even the Egyptian churches and so on. Yeah.
Yes, the whole Coptic Church. Right, but also I think there's a sense in which perhaps maybe if we were to kind of personalize it a little more, there's also the aspect of geography. The Western Church as representing the church in the global West.
Yes, indeed. So in that sense too, if we want to do that, except that the narratives are consistent within Europe and America. Right. In terms of that definition.
Great. Yep. And interestingly, the 2017 Back to the Bible commissioned survey of spiritual conditions in Jamaica.
Yes.
One of the questions that they had of the clergy focused on around similar themes. Yes. And the percentage of those who indicated that they were struggling with between pornography and addiction to addictive substances.
Yes.
And other sexual issues. The percent, I don't remember the percentage, no, but it was rather alarmingly high.
Yes.
What was interesting as I perused that study was that a strong percentage of the clergy that was surveyed were clergy persons under 40.
Yes.
And so there was that whole dynamic as well. So I think what we are seeing unfolding, just in terms of what we have covered so far, And just to contextualize this for our viewers, we're certainly not wanting to paint a picture of doom and gloom, or to suggest that all clergy are thus involved. But I believe what Napoleon wanted to do from the outset was to kind of put a particular frame of reference on the discussion, the Western Church on sexuality, to say that if we are going to have the discussion, and if we are going to have a frank discussion on the matter, that we perhaps would do well to begin by admitting that within the ranks and file of the Western Church itself are the leaders and the members who themselves are having struggles when it comes on to matters of sexuality.
Indeed. In fact, if you live in a 10-story house and there's a curtain in one of the rooms in one of the far-flung wings, I don't think you're going to leave that curtain on file because it's a 10-story house. You're going to want to take action, evasive action, whatever action, to make sure that it doesn't get to the rest of the property, you know? So we're not raising and talking and having this conversation to make anybody look bad. We are pastors in our own right, and we see the issues up front, and we thank God for those who continue to walk faithfully. Indeed, some with their own struggles, some who are walking, as it were, in many instances between the raindrops in working through issues of their own sexuality and managing all the other stuff that they have to manage. Because as most of us know, spiritual leadership, church leadership is among the toughest forms of leadership there is.
Right.
And to be able to end well. In fact,
right.
the studies tell us that many pastors don't get to end their lives in ministry. Many pastors leave ministry. They are burnt out, they are pushed out, all kinds of variables come to bear in the conversation.
Oh, yes.
So we really want to make that point that pastors do very well for the most part. It's not a story rightly he's pointing out. It's not doom and gloom and failure and corruption, but we want to recognize in those spaces where this is a reality, and we need to deal with it as such.
Yes, absolutely. Because a basic honesty is so important, and I think that's where a lot of us fail as leaders in whatever sphere we are. We are not honest about our own struggles or own issues. I mean, you know the way, the extent to which we have been agitating, for example, that at the seminary and at other seminaries, that at entrance and during the course of study, and certainly upon getting ready for exit, that such matters be explored. And so that where there are underlying issues, they can be identified and persons can receive the kind of curative help that they are needed. We don't have that. We're not honest about our own struggles and our own issues. We're not honest about the fact that spiritual leaders, as humans, are also susceptible to these proclivities, and have also been impacted by some of the antecedent the push factors. We ignore them, we try to sweep them under the carpet, and it is only when further down the road, when the damage has already been done, damage to reputational damage to those who have been advantaged of by the person who is in that position of power and abuses that position of power. All kinds of damage and the fallout, having to deal with the fallout. Then perhaps we say, if we had known. But we did know, or we perhaps we chose not to know. You know, so I'm very glad that you chose to highlight that, and we want persons to understand that is the angle that we are taking it from.
Absolutely.
Right. And also, too, following up with that is that the air that is that the expectations then of pastors, people usually put them up on a pedestal and that's where they want to stay.
Right.
That is the kind of assumption that they want to bring across, that I am perfect.
Right.
I am supposed to be perfect.
Right.
I'm supposed to show that I'm perfect because I am this spiritual leader. I'm the head of this congregation. So I can have no faults. I can have no failure. I have to be a superhuman. And I think sometimes underneath that mask then, or that costume, the person is really struggling, and then they cannot be human in front of you anymore because you already see them as superhuman. And so I think that is a lot of pressure for the pastor then, because what people want of them, and then they have to be that. So they have no time to be themselves and to check myself to know that, hey, I'm having this issue, but then I have to put on the mask of perfection for my congregation.
Several issues that you raised here, like several critical issues, because it was just this week I was again looking at the Timothy text on the qualifications of the church leader, and there are some very, very, very heavy stuff. He must have a good reputation of people outside of the church. He must be able to manage his family well. He must demonstrate some critical character traits. He must also be marked by certain spiritual gifts and so on. So it's a high bar. The problems with bars, though, come against people's reality. The reality of the search team. That is very clear that if you come here with certain issues, you can't pastor this church.
Right.
There's a pastor who he was just casually talking with members of the board because he had gone to the plaza the week before, and he was just looking around, and his eye fell upon a mannequin in one of the stores. And he just lightly said in the conversation in the meeting with the other board members, I was looking at this mannequin and I felt a little bit sexual by looking at the mannequin. And while he was preaching that Sunday, he was given a letter. A letter was put on the pulpit. Pretty much a letter says, you're no longer pastor here.
Wow.
Yeah. Again.
Wow. You see?
It was as simple as that for them, because he was not supposed to admit to any such thing. In other words, we don't want to hear. If that's your issue, we pastor us, but don't tell us.
That is it. That is it, Napoleon. That you've hit the nail on the head. As long as we don't know.
Fundamental issues with us. Yes.
Absolutely. As long as we don't know.
So the board don't want to know.
Yes.
The congregation wants to worship many of our leaders.
Yes.
And many of our leaders won't admit to our struggles. We won't, because ultimately you're going to pay my check. And if I tell you that I am struggling here and you put a letter on in front of me while I'm preaching, then what's the point? How can I be honest? How can I be upfront? How can I be straight with you if I can't tell you really what's happening with me?
But it goes to show that person's or our congregation has a serious problem with their own sexuality as well.
Well, church in generality has a problem with, and maybe Teddy, going back to the issue at seminary, training institutions don't do enough work with pastors, in particular, and training on issues of sex and sexuality.
Right.
Because
which brings us right to the other thing we wanted to raise, the historical hesitance, reluctance, perhaps even fear that the Western church has had to confront and to openly address and speak about and deal with matters of sexuality.
Yeah.
Well,
where did that come from?
But I don't know that's true. See, what I think, two things probably. One, Christians tend to begin to read the Bible from Genesis 3. Sin.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the church fathers, many of them had a very unhealthy view of sex and sexuality.
Right.
Chief
among who was Saint Augustine, right?
Augustine, Origen, all of these men,
yes,
they said some horribly nasty things about sex and sexuality.
Yes.
And Eve.
Yeah. And again, Napoleon, arising out of their own struggles with their sexuality.
Absolutely, absolutely. You are right. And the darkening of womankind by men who didn't know how to deal with their own issues. So that's one of the issues, how the church has come to only talk about sex and sexuality in negative, horribly negative ways. Treat women equally as in horrible, horrible ways. And up to now has not yet had the common decency to apologize. But also, those who try to begin to read the Bible from Genesis 1, it was good. He made male and female. It was beautiful. It was good, etc. It was very good, the word says.
Yes, yes.
And
when you say it, you're not just talking about the fact of their creation.
Yes, but the fact of their experience.
You're specifically say it. I want you to say it. that God made sex.
Yes,
and declared it to be good.
Absolutely. And indeed, you are absolutely right. And that is a part of the problem.
Before you go
Can I go Sunday morning and start the sermon?
Yeah.
This is good.
Before you go on, though, I am just here recalling when I too was at the seminary, yes. And I was in human sexuality class. And that class was very visual.
Class that your husband pushed to have established in seminary. I might add.
What? Yeah, it was very visual, and there were a lot of older married women in the class. I was probably the second youngest.
Church women. Yes. Married older church women.
They are married to pastors.
Yes.
They are women's ministry leaders themselves. Yes. They are mothers. And they could not bring themselves to say the word sex.
Yes.
It's like their lips would have locked up on them. Lockjaw. To say the word sex in class. And not even that's Napoleon, can I say? Yes. Or a lecturer allowed us to use the other word.
What word is that, please?
The word sex.
What other word?
And might I tell you, I think the class was dwindling down after that.
Yes.
But you know, I was excited.
Yeah.
This is a young girl. I was excited because it was an open and honest discussion about something that is a natural part of you.
Right.
But it is not only.
We didn't pick it up along the way. We were born, and as a discussion we had last week, we were born with our sexuality and we should embrace it positively. And so when I saw these supposed to be mature women who are supposed to, so I'm wondering, what are they passing on to the younger women in their congregation who are desiring to be married, who are desiring to court, to date? I don't even know if they know what the words court and date means, because as they see a boy and a girl talking, oh, let's marry you. As if it's only sex that people do. And I don't get it. I still grapple because I have children, I know of a daughter, I have a son, and I have to have age-appropriate conversation with them about sex because it has been warped, Napoleon. And if we're a part of the church and we cannot even bring ourselves to say the word, we have a serious problem, and I have a serious problem with it. We must be able to discuss this topic freely, starting at the level of the church.
Yes. So Uncle Napoleon, speaking of which, your nephew, who turned 8 last week.
Yes.
A couple of weeks ago during this summer, we we went to buy food at the cook shop. And when I got back into the car, he said, Daddy, what's a Rough Rider? So you understand?
I do.
All right.
And you had to explain to him.
Of course.
What a Rough Rider is.
He even told us how he and his sister were made. So yeah.
Okay.
You get me, Uncle Napoleon?
In a safe space, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's important to have those conversations.
Absolutely.
And age appropriate.
Because we want to make sure that we are the ones who are framing and shaping his worldview on his sexuality.
Yeah, and he's to embrace it at every developmental stage, because things happen developmentally. So he's 8 now, and I'm sure he's going into puberty soon, and some things are going to be happening to him. And we need to be able to tell him that this is it, and not about the bird and the bees and some other foolishness, which I hate to hear.
Right.
Part of the challenge there, guys, is we are still spiritualizing Song of Songs. We have not yet been able to admit the
allegorical interpretation.
So we spiritualize, allegorize, and all
yes.
raw sexual passion in the text.
Yes.
Which even raises when was sex happening and by whom and all of that. We don't have those conversations about it, because as far as we're concerned, it's a figure of Jesus's relationship with the argument. You know, that's how best to deal with it, rather than seeing it as an opportunity to teach some serious issues of sex and sexuality to our congregation. Because the truth is, when that conversation is left outside of it, some of the myths that get thrown into the mix. This is why some of our little girls are being abused, because the myth says no, you have to have sexual intercourse with a girl as younger, a virgin, and a virgin is now younger and younger and younger and younger. And this is why some of them are doing it, because of some of the myths out there. And so unless we begin to teach sex and sexuality properly within the space in which it is best to teach, in the space of church, then we're going to keep on getting ourselves in the problem that we're seeing within the clergy, in the church, and in the society in general.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we wanted to ask you about whether there is actually such a thing as a theology of sex.
Oh, yes, there is. Indeed, it's the first of the theology. In the beginning, God created male, and as a first conversation,
male
conversation
and female. Absolutely.
About sex, if not about gender. Work component.
Yeah, exactly. And we spoke about that last week. That is way more than gender.
Absolutely. So we have to have that conversation. But as well in that part of the conversation, we will know as church need to grapple with the things we don't talk about, the agender, the transgender, and those related narratives that we are so finicky about, rather than helping people to work through where they are at. Sports persons who are contending with their maleness and femaleness and their hormone levels and all of that. Do we have a responsibility as a community of the people of God to help answer some of these issues for some of those persons who are not settled one way or the other because of just what is happening to them, at least chemically, not in the other related
chemically.
Do we have a responsibility to answer, or do we say, God said male and female, argument done? How do we help persons?
The straight down the middle.
Exactly. And we need to contend with that. No, we're not saying that people are just being cavalier and practicing their democratic right to do and to be. That's not what we're saying here. But we're saying that where persons have to contend with those issues, how do we answer? It's important that we think about it and work those issues Because yes, there's Genesis 1, male and female, but are there nuances in between that need to be dealt with, treated with, examined in the light of scriptures, in the light of how people are dealing with their own issues, so that we're hearing their heart, we're understanding where they're coming from, and we're offering meaningful solutions to where they are at.
Right. And I mean, you take, for example, the Matthew 9 text, Matthew 19 rather, text, where Jesus categorically states that some are born as eunuchs. Right? What would be the equivalent of what we now refer to as intersex, or the not so long ago term hermaphrodite.
Right.
And
as its implications for church life.
Exactly. Because there, he speaks of them in a positive light.
Yes.
And Jesus no less, indicates that they were born that way. You know, how do we locate such persons?
Yes.
As you said, with what is the responsibility of the faith community to such persons?
Or do we think that these persons were fictitious characters and they wouldn't come to light and we wouldn't have to deal with them?
Right. Yeah, and I think for a long time,
such as a person occupy the pulpit.
Exactly.
What? No, I don't think so.
I don't think we are thinking through enough. We're not having the conversations. I think we are still content to have our collective heads buried in the sand, kind of hoping that these things will not come to our doorsteps, that we just won't have to deal with it. And it is simply a luxury that the Caribbean church can no longer continue to afford to give itself.
Yeah, but you guys would know, Teddy, like you know, a significant part of my own philosophy is to love the Lord with our minds.
Right. That's right.
And as you mentioned, that's Uncle Napoleon. Let me just pause to say, I remember the first time Teddy made that comment at church. We're at some church, and he said that a lot of times most Christians, they come to church and they don't use their brain.
Right.
They don't think, they don't use their mind, they don't use their brain, they leave their brain outside because everything is just spiritual.
Quote unquote spiritual.
Everything is just spiritual. So you leave your brain as if God didn't make you with a brain to think. And if you think about something and question it, it doesn't mean that you are blasphemous or that you're not spiritual, but you're using your brain because God gave you a brain. And so from that moment when he made that statement, it made me think about things. When I go to church, I'm thinking about, all right, an issue that may come up. Are we as church people really dealing with it, and how we approach people, how we approach issues and struggles that people are having? Are we thinking about the state the person is in and how it's affecting their entire life? Or are we just saying, let's pray for your brother, let's pray for your sister, and leave it alone? And after you pray, it doesn't go away. So I don't think we're really thinking about, all right, yes, praying is absolutely good. We're going to pray for you because you're having this struggle. But after I pray for you, what next? Yeah. Do I follow up with you? Or does the prayer cover it, fix it, transform it, and you're good to go for life?
But even simpler things, Latin, even simpler things. I'm at a church and the praise and worship leader is screaming at the congregation.
Yeah. And praise the Lord, church.
And I thought to myself, but maybe that girl down there who is sitting down, maybe
hungry. Yeah, right.
Maybe she's on her period.
She's been abused.
You know, something maybe happening to her, and maybe screaming praise and worship leader does not represent God, nor represent God's heart in the moment. And so there has to be a kind of stepping back in how we deal with our people, how we deal with the congregation in general, and issues that come to the fore. When it comes again to issues of sex and sexuality, we are not doing well, and we have not done well.
Yeah.
Well, just now Teddy's checking with our friends on Facebook to see if there are any comments or questions for you. Now, so we're just checking. But yes, I mean, we have to really think about the next person or sister beside us, and not just to say touch your neighbor and tell them whatever.
Right.
Talk to your neighbor, not just touch them and say and then continue. You know, talk with them, find out what's really happening with your neighbor.
Yeah, you know, the fact of the matter is the church still holds a significant place of influence in the Western society, in different parts of the Western world, in different, however we define the Western church. That is still the case, although it is dwindling in perhaps more so in some places than others. And so we have to always be mindful of that and be mindful of the times in which we live and what those times call for. I can't ever stop thinking about the significance of what was said about the sons of Issachar, the tribe of Issachar, when the tribes were being described in terms of what the volunteers from each tribe, what qualification they brought with them when they went to make David king. Men who understood the times and knew what Israel should do. That has to be the defining character of the nature of the church. At every time, in all times throughout history. Which brings me to ask you, Napoleon.
Yes.
So this week in particular, the RJR Gleaner group released over 2 nights at least. I'm not sure, I didn't get to see the news tonight, so I'm not sure if they continued with that. But 2 findings from Don Anderson poll that they commissioned. The first evening, the finding was released that I believe it was 82%, but the overwhelming majority of Jamaicans still believe that the Buggery law as is should be retained. That is to continue to criminalize homosexuality, Buggery. And then on the second night, that the majority still believe that the law that criminalizes abortion essentially on demand, to borrow North American term a bit, should still be retained. But interestingly, on the first evening when they were looking at the Buggery law, they showed a video clip where the Prime Minister, not sure how recent, if it was this week or maybe some time ago, where the Prime Minister was essentially saying that the view of the church, the local church, on the matter is, he used the term evolving. He was talking about the fact that views are evolving, and he referenced the Jamaican church in indicating that even among the Jamaican church, the views are changing and are in a state of flux. So my question then is, what are your thoughts on this? Is the Prime Minister accurate in his assessment of the state of the position in the posture of the local church as part of the Western church? And what are the issues and considerations?
The church has not changed fundamentally on either abortion or homosexuality. And as the issue has come up, Lati, I go back to the broader issues before us on 2 principles. One, the principle of how we relate to each other on what Jesus really wants of us. Is it the idea of the protection of life uppermost in Jesus's mind? Or is it the idea of the quality of life that's uppermost in his mind? That life exists, or that life has a particular quality? Those 2 things are important. Then on the other side, is a conversation about personal pleasure, or is a conversation about how well can we serve? So for us as Christians, we understand the issues of rights, we understand the issues of responsibility, whether it is buggery or abortion or any of those things. And what is it that God is getting at? Just that life exists? Or is a quality of life not also equally important? In other words, be fruitful and multiply, is that all he had in mind? Or in the answering of being fruitful and multiplying, what about the checks and balances to make sure that as you are fruitful, as you are multiplying, as you're fulfilling that call, that here are some checks and balances to safeguard that? So for instance, should we not protect a girl who was molested by an uncle from carrying a pregnancy that she never asked for? You know what I mean?
Right.
Do we have a responsibility?
I seem to recall, Napoleon, I'm almost sure that somewhere in the Torah, some of the guidelines in there speak to those instances of abuse.
And that's a point I'm making.
The very protection
of
the personhood and
well-being. Absolutely. So it is not a carte blanche doing anything you want. I don't think that's a helpful or healthy model, even where most of us would say the woman has a right to her body. That right does not mean that she can just do about anything she wants with her body. I don't think that's a biblical concept, nor would it be a sensible concept to embrace, but rather one that says,
nor is it sustainable either.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So I appreciate the context of how best do I hear this and how best do I apply it? Critical. And then, of course, is my worldview one more about how do I enjoy myself at whatever cost, on whatever term, as long as everybody around me is enjoying self? Is that enough? So should we all go and smoke, for want of a better term? Are there not issues to contend after that with lung cancer, etc., etc.? In other words, because I am enjoying myself smoking, and it's okay for me to smoke, don't.
Right. What are the limits?
I still have to pick up that tab when in other words, we have to appreciate that whatever we do in the pursuit of our enjoyment, somebody still will have to pick up the tab.
Right.
And are we saying, is it okay for anybody to pick up the tab because I am exercising my right? And I do not think that's the model and that's the way we want to go, whether it is abortion or buggery. So I am trying my best to frame the conversation as broadly as I can to take into account the variables. The third part of the conversation, perhaps, Steve, is this, that is God still committed to a world in which the worship place is peopled? In other words, is God still committed to having people around as how he wants humanity to be? In other words, anything, in my mind, anything that generally and consistently stands in the way of the continuation of the human race, for me, becomes a problem.
Right.
In other words, I don't support nuclear technology that goes towards the destruction of human life.
Right. Yeah.
As a
principle, anything that violates that, well, the divine procreative.
I am not making it divine entity. I am not even going there. I'm saying, as a principle, I would like to know that humanity continues.
Right. And posterity.
Absolutely. So the proliferation of nuclear bombs will not further that.
Germ warfare, chemical warfare.
All of those will not. And I'm taking that principle to other parts of my life. In other words, it therefore means there are some things that may be okay, but I am not going to support. Not because I'm a Christian, because in my own frame, in my own philosophy, it does not seem to further the protection of the human race.
Of the human race, yeah.
I take it as broadly as that. I know that there are nuances to the conversation, and I respect them.
Yeah.
But I'm also saying that if we take a frame that appreciates some other variable, then something like, I know in Switzerland and other places, mercy killing, I'm not going to embrace that. I understand why somebody in pain and so on might want to end it. But I also believe that there's an essential dignity to human life in whatever form it is. In other words, so if I can take my life because I'm sick, what is to prevent the state from doing similarly for some people to decide that I shouldn't exist because my nose is too broad? You know what I mean?
Right.
I take the view that there is essential dignity to human life.
Yes.
And if I can appreciate essential dignity, then there are going to be some things I will not embrace.
Yeah. So we have to widen the conversation. We have to broaden the conversation. And I mean, ultimately, the overarching principle of love, has to factor in. But I tell you, I don't know where the time goes when
I am ready to continue. I am ready to continue, but we are hoping to have you again with us now. I mean, I'm just here thinking, one word that comes to my mind in all that you have been saying is the application, how they apply things.
Absolutely.
Right. So
I think, can I just say quickly, I think that we have become so emotionally charged about buggery and homosexuality and abortion and all of that, that we forget to just step back and look at some critical components, if for nothing else, as a philosophical issue, outside of the trappings of the fear of making it religious, because to do that create a whole other set of issues. But can we answer, I would like a humanity that is marked by continuity.
Yes.
And if I embrace that, then here are some things that permissible, but perhaps might not serve continuity.
May not be ideal.
There may be some things that serve personal interest, but in the social structure, how far can I take personal interest, even if all of us agree to it?
Right.
How far can we go?
Yeah, how far can we push it?
Absolutely.
And if we push it further and further, what are the possible spin-offs?
Absolutely.
If we think it through long enough. And don't just...
And that's the danger. That in my mind is the danger. And we're not talking about the slippery slope argument. That's not where I'm at all. I'm saying that ultimately, when we leave some things the way they are and we don't take sufficient responsibility in the exercise, we end up into uncalled for trouble. Nature is a vacuum.
Absolutely. Now, we'll definitely have to continue the conversation. So just know, putting you on notice, we will have you back again.
Appreciate it.
To continue the conversation.
Tell
us quickly, what have you been up to? You recently released another book. Tell us where we can find that.
It's not yet out.
No, not that one.
Oh, not this one.
The most recently published one, where we can get that. Tell us the cost. And
what's that one called? What's that book called, T?
The Crucified Life.
Okay.
No, T, the one after that.
He ascended.
The one after that. I got. Oh my goodness! Not the Crucified Life. Light Afflictions.
Light Afflictions. Yes. and we are preparing. Well, Light Afflictions is the latest one. Yes.
Yes.
And that's at Amazon. And we can get it for you if you'd like as well. 2.5.
Right.
And of course, support the ministry as best you can and help us reach others and get the word out.
Right.
We're working on fighting lightning as we speak to get that out as within this year as well.
Great. All the best. And
thank you, family.
We'll definitely be a part of that. 876-790-4469.
That's
for
correct.
those of you who want to reach Pastor Black. 876-790-4469. Available for your conferences, your conventions, your teaching, training, a whole host.
Your premarital counseling and post-marital counseling. The real things, them.
Thank you so much for hanging out with us.
Thank you, family. I appreciate it.
It has been a wonderful evening as we grapple with the issues. Again, just barely able to scratch the surface. But let's keep the conversation going. Send your comments, send your questions under the replay on the various platforms on YouTube, on Facebook, and we'll get some clips over on IG as well. Follow us on Instagram. This is us, Jones Clan, over on Instagram. On Facebook, This Is Us, like the page, and on YouTube, the YouTube channel, This Is Us. Right here, stay good, walk good until we meet again. And I am Terry Jones.
And I am Latoya Berry Jones.
And this is us. Blessings over and out.